Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we're going to talk about dancing nurses and a guy named Matt Walsh from, I guess, the Daily Wire. He has an issue with them dancing. Now, if you're unaware, nurses have been doing choreographed dances or conga lines, whatever, posting it to Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Doesn't matter. This has apparently hurt Mr. Walsh's feelings. He feels that they should be busy, working, doing something, that they shouldn't have time to dance, or that this is an indication that it's not really that bad, or whatever. So he made a tweet, got some backlash, made a video, and we're going to talk about all that. But first I want to tell you a story, and it's a story about somebody a lot of you may know. If you haven't met him, you probably heard me talk about him, doing relief efforts and stuff like that. I just realized I didn't ask his permission to tell this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway because I don't think he's going to care. So if you've ever met Joe Bear, he's a nice guy. He is a nice, fun guy. There's no other way to describe him. Something you may not know about him is that he once gave a dance of an exotic nature in the back of an armored vehicle as he was rolling out with Task Force 20 to go snatch a high-value target in the middle of a combat zone. Seems weird, right? Shouldn't have time to do that. He was doing something pretty important. Shouldn't have time to do that. Seems odd. Why would you even want to dance like that anyway? It's crazy. Except it's not. Dancing before battle, that dates back to prehistory. Dates back to prehistory. In fact, today, there are still indigenous cultures that will dance around a campfire and chant and psych themselves up and get them ready for what they're going to deal with. Convince themselves that that opposition that they're going to face, it's not going to touch them. Gets their mind right, gets them psychologically prepared for what they're going to deal with. It's good for morale. It's kind of like maybe that's what the nurses are doing, because they're walking into battle too. They're going to dance in that hallway, then they're going to walk into that room and dance with the Reaper to protect your hypothetical loved one's life. I would prefer they be in the right frame of mind. So they're doing it for the age-old reason. They're also posting them online to raise the morale and show camaraderie and solidarity with people who are in hospitals that are maybe a little more rigid, that wouldn't allow that. Or maybe the videos are made in hospitals where it hasn't hit yet, and they're trying to raise the morale of those that are really in the midst of it. This isn't a new thing. It's been going on since before writing. Okay, so let's get on to the tweet and the video and all that stuff. So he made the tweet, and the video from there certainly appears to be from a maternity ward, but this bothered him. He's taking this as evidence that either it's not that bad or, they're neglecting patients, whatever, Again, we've just got to have somebody to blame right now. So, after the backlash that should have been foreseeable, he makes a video. The video says that healthcare workers caused us to voluntarily plunge ourselves into a Great Depression. That's not true. That's inaccurate. The advice of healthcare workers, which weren't nurses, by the way, probably would have triggered a recession. That's true. The Depression came from people like Mr. Walsh. People who pushed the idea that this wasn't a big deal. People that pushed the idea that they should still go out. People that provided information that may have been, let's just say, less than accurate, such as Mr. Walsh's tweet, where he talks about we shouldn't have to handle the entire country the way we do New York because of population density. Population density has nothing to do with this. There's a whole bunch of people in South Dakota that can attest to that right now. Everybody in that cluster. It's not the population density of a city or state that matters. It's the activities and how close they are together. And the longer people go out unnecessarily and engage in those activities and get close and don't social distance and don't wash their hands and don't wear a mask and don't do all of the things that they need to do to slow it down, the longer this is going to last. It takes us from a recession to a depression. This could have been over in like 30 days had there been some solidarity, some camaraderie, had people with a following actually got behind it and said, yeah, this is what we need to do. We kind of have that obligation. I would suggest we have that obligation. He goes on to say that we did this because the hospitals were overrun. No, that's not why we're doing it. It's not why we're staying home. We're staying home to make sure they're not overrun. The fact that some nurses have time to make videos kind of suggests that it's working. That's the whole idea of that curve that everybody's talking about. It seems like somebody with a following should have researched and understood this by now. The idea is to keep it below the threshold that our medical infrastructure can handle. So the whole point is to make sure they don't get overrun. Then he makes the plea on behalf of the employees. This is unprofessional. This isn't a good idea. This is wrong, because there might be employees who lost their jobs who are now in a food bank line. And, they're seeing this and thinking, if nurses can dance, why can't I go back to work? And that's a good question, he says. No, it's not. No, it isn't. And it's your duty as somebody with a following to explain why it's not. Because if they go out and they engage in activities that are not essential, then this gets prolonged. And the recession gets turned into a depression. They can't go back to work so they don't end up like that cluster in South Dakota. It's not a good question. He goes on to say that he gets high-stress jobs. No, he doesn't. I'm certain of that. And he follows that up pretty quickly with the idea of saying that he knows, mind you, that nurses aren't like going home and grieving for their loved one, or for his loved one, his hypothetical loved one who lost their life. They're not grieving for them. They're not mourning them. He thinks he knows that. I can assure you that's wrong. Nurses do, in fact, go home and grieve for patients. They'll go home and grieve for patients that weren't theirs, simply because they reminded them of somebody. Or maybe they were the same age as their kid. It happens a lot. I don't think he understands high-stress jobs, because then the dancing and all of these claims would not have been made. They wouldn't have been made. He goes on to say that he's not sorry, because he knows that the more people that tell him he's wrong, well, that just means that he's right, because that makes sense. This whole community of right-wing pundits, they're going to start doing this a lot. They're going to be looking for scapegoats. They're going to be trying to find people that they can pin this on and blame it on, because they don't want to accept responsibility for prolonging this, because their whole shtick on that side is to say, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You're better than those people over there, those people that needed assistance. And they do all of this pandering to make those people feel better than somebody below them. They do everything they can to kick down. And now that the audience they pander to needs help and they need assistance, man, they got to come up with somebody to scapegoat. If they don't, it may shake the very foundations of what they believe, their whole platform. Because people might need help. Maybe that means those other people that they've been looking down on, kicking down on, maybe they just had something happen too. Nurses, docs, dance, do primal chanting, paint your face, whatever it takes for you to pregame and get in the mindset to walk into that room and do your job. Do it. We got your back. Those of us who actually get high-stress jobs, those of us who have seen the downside of not being focused. And that's the last thing I want to touch on. He talks about nurses needing to show more decorum because of the family members. It would be upsetting to family members to see nurses dancing. He retweeted a a message that said that, they're obviously not camera shy. So why don't we have footage of these overrun hospitals? It would be upsetting to family members to see nurses dancing, but it wouldn't be upsetting to see their family members as patients gasping for breath. Just so some pundit, some podcaster can have a talking point. If you have a platform right now, you have an obligation to do your part, to lead people, to keep them safe. And if that doesn't do it for you, your obligation, your responsibility to society, let me give you the personal interest that motivates the right wing most of the time. These are your Patreon sponsors. These are the people that buy your merchandise. These are the people that watch those ads that you get revenue for. And your stances are literally killing them. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good night.